Hello, and welcome to Untraditional Paths. This is a podcast where I interview entrepreneurs and other creators and leaders across different industries. My name's Jacqueline Basulto, and I am the CEO and founder of SeedX's. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking to a co-founder, Mr. Victor Lewis, of Muses On Demand, which is an application and website that connects creatives to hiring managers who are looking for people with creative skills and talents. Mod is a project that SeedX's completed almost a year and a half ago now, and it's off to an amazing start. It's a beautifully designed application, and the community is what makes it even better, showcasing the art of photographers, visual artists, and more. Mod does a great job of connecting creatives to the world and allowing them to portray themselves and their portfolio without having to put any very specific resume information. On Mod, the art speaks for itself.
Thanks so much, Victor, for being here with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey and more about Mod. Do you want to start by just telling us in your own words what Mod is?
Sure. Mod was created I created it as a tool for myself because that's where the original thought process came from when I had a major job with a retailer that's national, and there was a need for freelance and trying to find a creative merchant or a creative visual person that could bring newness to the platform of retail with it being forever changing. And so as I was having to make cuts and make changes within the organization, we realized that there isn't a platform to identify or contact or connect with creatives easily. You have the traditional platforms of LinkedIn and Fiverr and Behance and a few others like that, but none of them showcase the work first, and none of them really allowed you to address or hire a creative without a bias. And so we thought it would be interesting if there was a platform where you could search for what you're looking for, whether it was a great visual merchandising person. My co-founder was looking for great creatives within the medical industry to create commercials and content that you could actually see what they did before you even knew who they were, because everything else is about a headshot, about years of experience, all this resume and copy, and then it takes you multiple clicks to even get to their work, to understand what they're all about and if they're even capable or they're even are capable or if they're understanding of the content that you're trying to hire.
Great. So I'd love to dig into that a bit more. So Mod focuses on work first, it seems like. Can you tell me a bit about what it's like to be a muse on Mod and how that prioritization of work before profile or, education or experience, how that comes together on the platform?
It did. We did a lot of research. First of all, we just, scoured the web with, what content was out there as far as what people were looking for and that were creative on what they could platform themselves. And as we began to really dig down and interview people across the country, we were in London, we were all over the world, pretty much, just talking to different people about what the obstacles were. And we ran into so many creatives that said, you know what, I can do the job of my boss and my boss's boss that I'm working for, but because I don't have 5 years plus experience and I don't have this elaborate work resume of great agencies or organizations that I worked under, that I was being discredited. There was so many women that said I wouldn't even be entertained because I'm a woman, and it just went on and on and on those same type of dialogues. Just the frustration that that they weren't looked at what they could create, but they were worked at who they were and what their history was, but not
Right.
from their creative aspect.
Right. That's really interesting. I've experienced, I guess, in starting SeedX, a similar sort of phenomenon where I was before in organizations and I felt like I didn't have enough responsibility or enough space to grow into my full potential. So I definitely have experienced that as a young woman myself. So I think I always try to do the same thing where I put my work first, even in real life when I'm doing outreach. That way, you can't deny a person's work, even if they're younger than you or less experienced. If the work can speak for itself, then it sort of cancels all of that out. So that's really interesting that you've been able to do that on an online platform.
Yeah, personalities are important, and
Right.
there is a certain respect you have for work ethic and history, and maybe some packs that you ran in and learned from. But
Sure.
I think if you're looking for just raw, innovative talent, you really need to look at what the person can create. Because what ends up happening in corporate America is we form, or you become the person they want you to be based upon the organization, opposed to being able to filter in your own style or unique
Right.
creativity to take a project to another level. And so we really, that was our main goal. It was a bit selfish, but we also thought it'd be really cool because I traveled the country with my job, and I meet so many amazing creative people that were doing really cool projects and art and photography outside of their day job, but no one knew. And as you start talking to people and understanding them, you were just like, "You're kidding me! You work here and you do all that?" It was just mind blowing.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me a bit about what it was like to actually experience the evolution within retail during your last more traditional role, where you started to see the need for more freelancers, short-term contractors, maybe even remote workers. How did that sort of happen over time? And where do you see that? Do you see this continuing to happen where we sort of continue to hire people on project bases and in remote locations? I'm just curious about your experience actually being involved in the process of this evolution.
Yeah, I think the transition that the world's going through, especially in retail, there's you're tied to a budget and a number, and you have to have deliverables that meet the stockholders' expectations. So within that, you have to take cuts and you have to think smarter and tighter to be able to accomplish and deliver, the goal. And so as you do, when you look at the financial part of it, that limits you from keeping that in-house. And
Right.
going to more of a freelance, more interesting, platform where you could go and find different, creatives or muses is even a better word, to influence what you're working on, is amazing. It will keep you fresh and keep you more innovative. But the problem is that I think it would move faster if there was more platforms where you could find them easily. But the process
Exactly.
is so difficult, and it becomes very, very expensive, especially for the creative and the muse to do it, because they themselves have to give up such a large portion when you work with different sites that are up there now of what they're creating to just be found. And so that's why we created this very low budget, entry level. So much of what we do is free, to be able to get exposure for the muses that join Mod.
Right, that's great. I definitely see that in my own business and in talking with other business owners, that it's really difficult to find a talented worker, and all of these platforms are sort of saturated. And something I love about Mod is that, the best content is really discoverable, and it's not yet totally full of just random content. It's really genuine and great. So, how could a hiring manager or business owner listening to this podcast get more involved in Mod?
Well, the thing that's interesting is that I think you use the site, whether you're an employer or a Muse, you can use the site exactly the same. You can search by city, you can search by Muse or Medium, whether what you're looking for. You can search different ways throughout the site and look for the type of artistic flavor that you may be wanting and desiring. And as you're searching and flipping, and we've created a lot of fun little little features is the better word, that would talk to, swiping and seeing just random content that was posted 5 years ago, that was posted a week ago. It's not categorized by what's the latest and greatest. It's the only thing you see,
right,
but you see everything. And I think that's where you get influenced, because work that was done maybe 3 years ago from an artist or a creative that was ahead of the curve could have been already working on that. And so it's interesting that you can still, access and see what the next great thing is.
Great. So I think that brings up another point, that Mod isn't just a place to discover talent, but it's also a place for hiring managers, or more specifically muses usually, to become inspired. So something I love about Mod that you just mentioned is that you can swipe through something like a lookbook. It's like an inspiration book, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to say a bit about that?
Yeah, it's fun. We just were looking at the market, and we looked at dating apps, we looked at Instagram, we looked at all of the social media platforms that are out there, and people like to swipe and they like easy function. So we decided to put something a little flavorful, that if you wanted to just get inspired and just look at random, as if you were looking through a magazine, that you hit inspire me, and 100 random projects are pulled from all the Muses portfolios, and you can go through it and you can applaud it, you can send it, you can dive deeper into that Muses portfolio to see more about them, you can communicate with them, and so forth.
Great. I love that feature, so I had to bring it up. And so what sort of muses have you been attracting the most of? Like, is there a specific category or categories of muses, from whether it's industries or what skills they have, that you've seen more so than others on the platform?
Yeah, we're only focusing on 4 of them right now, which is art, photography, graphic design, and fashion. And so within those, it seems like the artist category is taking off a lot faster than the others. There's a lot of artists and creatives out there that paint and design really either fine art or just even really abstract. I mean, you're seeing it all. But it was interesting to see that take off over many other, I was obviously focusing on retail, and Doug was obviously focusing on graphic design, but it was interesting to see the art seems to be the biggest category that people are interested in. The nice thing too about Muses On Demand is that it catalogs everything for you, and that's really helpful, and you can share it and send it, and it's all free, so that you can see all your work in 1 page or 2 pages, depending how much you're posting, and get a real idea of who the creative is and what they're about. I find that really helpful, and it's easy to access, and you don't have to go through all this verbiage and content and fees and just all this other disruption to get to what you really want to see.
Right. I love that about Mod. It's also a platform for people to showcase their work. And it's interesting that that specifically has resonated with visual artists who probably are looking for a place to put their work in and to make it look nice. There are a lot of other portfolio websites around the web, but none of them are as streamlined like you're saying, where they're easy to share. It has like a modern feeling, so there's no clutter around the art. It really does just speak for itself. So that's
Definitely
great. What has it been like growing the platform? What are the difficulties of growing an application that people may not recognize before starting?
As far as if you were going to start your own website, is that kind of where you're coming from? That those challenges of doing a startup?
So specifically about getting members onto a platform or attracting new customers?
I don't know. If I think of myself, I'm really optimistic about,
right.
So I'm interested. But a lot of people, there's so much out there that you can go into, but once you start getting into it, there becomes a lot of distractors, whether it's fees or you have to spend several hours formatting it and really making this complex presentation. And then there's these additional, fees and questions and marketing tools that come up that there's some ulterior motive to what you think you're getting yourself into. And then bottom line is, it's like, okay,
right.
this is really not about, this is about them gaining marketing, people that they need to market to and sell tools to and do all these other, features that they're trying to sell outside of just taking care of the creative. And I think that's, that's where we went into it. We wanted all that to go away because it is deceiving and you get frustrated and you get excited and then all of a sudden you're let down or you can't afford it or you don't have the time or you don't even, many creatives don't use the internet and on a regular basis because it's all in their heads or so they don't want to, figure out the rabbit hole of how to put this together and get it. They hired off the work. Their About Me was very limited. They didn't have to go into this long, tutorial of garbage and history and they got work and that they were pleasantly surprised and had great experiences and were excited about the potential. So those are the glimmer of hopes when you start a business that you're like, is this going to fly? Is this going to work? What are we doing? And then trying to figure out the platform to attract the creatives to Muses On Demand so that they could see what could be. And it's fun to see it growing and the usage going from, we had one day where 150 people got on and we're like, what happened that day? Why did 150 people go to the site? Our average is like around 60 people a day. And so we're
That's
like,
exciting.
What happened there? So it's exciting where from the beginning we were seeing like 5 and 10 people. So it's headed in the right direction. I think that's probably the biggest challenge is like, what is the code to crack this, to get people excited and get the exposure you want to really allow this just to take off? Because we don't want to raise the prices. We don't want to make it difficult. We just want it to make it be a cool place where people can connect.
Right. And I think over time that message will just keep spreading and spreading and spreading. And that's what happens with platforms like this. But right now is also a really exciting time in a business that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of people see, either the very beginning stage of a company where, you're just thinking in your bedroom basically, and then it's sort of like the narrative skips everything that happens in between, and out comes something like Facebook, which is really established. And so a lot of people who've never been through entrepreneurship or a journey creating a business don't understand the process that's involved. And when you're at these stages of growth, it's nice that you're able to talk directly to the hiring people, talk directly to the muses, and still really foster the community without having to hire a bunch of people under you or, lose connection. And hopefully you never do, but it's a special time.
Exactly, and that's our number one goal is like we're just trying to keep this as streamlined and not put all these corporate layers in to be able to manage it so that it doesn't become more focused about the operation and meeting these numbers, that it just becomes about what we originally wanted to do was, have a cool place for creatives to drop their work and be found and be discovered. And, so that's really near and dear to our hearts. And we really balance it out. We have SeedX's is a great team, and then we have our marketing director out of LA. We're in New York. That just kind of rounds it all out and kind of keeps it going. And I don't know, it's pretty exciting. I'm really trying to stay away from getting investors, because then all of a sudden you're accountable to people for money, and I don't want to lose that accountability of why we did this, and to make it that we have to meet somebody else's expectation financially.
Right. Agreed. That's a good transition into my next question. So now that you are the founder of a technology company, which is exciting to say out loud, right?
Yeah. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. What is the difference between your role now, working with Mod, compared to a more traditional role? And did you ever, so a two-part question, did you ever think that you would venture into the world of entrepreneurship?
It's probably always been there, but like many of us, I always come from a fear base, and I had a family and daughters, and that had to get through school and college, and you have responsibilities. So taking big risks was not even in my thought process. I had to be safe and make sure that I was, providing. And so that limits you, and it limits you a lot, because there's other people's lives that are in stake. And so I think, this couldn't have happened at a better time, because all my responsibilities I didn't have those responsibilities any longer. My daughters were out of school, or my last one's going to school. I had enough money to do what I wanted to do, and I could venture into something that was exciting to me, and not have to worry about anybody getting hurt or being neglected because of financials. And I think, anybody out there that wants to do anything, stay debt free, and, follow that path as tight as you can, because that is such a disruptive to a creative process, to any process, is when you have that fear that, other people are going to be hurt, or finances are not going to be met, and so forth. So I think, that's where right now it's kind of, it's a lot of work, and we're doing it, and it's crazy at this time in my life, because I should be winding down, and by traditional retirement age, and 10 years. Yeah, it's just like I should be winding down, and I'm winding up, and I'm like, it's kind of funny.
That is funny. What was the tip of the iceberg for you? Like, what made you think, okay, I have to do this, and then start looking to put a team together to get it done?
I don't know. That's really interesting. I had the thought, and I started working on it when I was still in my job, my big role, and running and directing and traveling and doing all this stuff. And became so passionate about it that I, wanted to see what I could do with it, because I could, and it was like it just all kind of aligned at the right time. And trying to think, I lost my train of thought here for a second, but it was more just that it was the right time to be able to take this step and take this adventure and see what happens. And I think the biggest thing was that I had other opportunities throughout my life to maybe go out and do something that was, where I was the founder and the creator, and so forth, but I couldn't do it, and I did not want to let this opportunity pass by and look back and say, you should have done that, and why didn't you do that? And so I think it's just nice when all those moments and all those moons align, and you're able to make the steps out in the world to be able to pull it together. So.
Right. I think I remember the first time we met, that you said, I'm tired of seeing other people bring my thoughts into fruition when I can do it better, basically. And I agree with you. You know, trying to limit regret is super important. So I'm glad you took the dive, and I encourage other people to do so as well, because it's definitely worthwhile, even though it's difficult, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you sit there and you go, "Why am I? Should I be doing this?" Some days you go through that whole mind.
Right? Am
Craze.
I going crazy? Is this the real thing?
Yeah, you're like going, "Yeah, am I doing this? Why am I doing this again? Is this really gonna fly?" You start doubting. I mean, I listen to other great podcasts and hear people say the same thing. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm in line with a lot of great stuff," because I hear all these other people say the same thing. So I feel like I'm not alone, going
Right.
through it. But it's interesting, and to be quite honest with you, I just really rely on the universe to guide me, and just kind of just trusted in that, where before I felt like I had to control the world and control my destiny. And now it's really fun to kind of surrender to it and just follow your heart, and follow your thoughts, and throw them out there and see what comes back. And there's been so many great wins throughout the last 2 years of putting this all together. It's kind of mind blowing. It's like, be careful what you ask for. There's been so many phrases in my life that people have said things that, be true to yourself. Couldn't stand when someone would say, I was like, I can't be true to myself. I got people to feed. I got life to take care of, and I'm like, and of course it came from someone who was like, their children were grown, or they didn't have responsibilities, or they had excess finances. They didn't have to worry about it. So it's funny to be able to be on the other side of the wall, and be able to appreciate those phrases that people throw around, and like, oh, I get it now.
Right. You realize pretty quickly, I think, when you start a business, that things are going to happen that you can't avoid. So you sort of have to just go with the flow, right? Like you're saying.
Yeah.
I read this funny joke in one of the entrepreneurs I follow on Twitter. He posted, I got a parking ticket today and I didn't even blink twice. I must be a seasoned entrepreneur now. Because
that's cool. You know what? That's really, I never thought about it like that, but you're right.
Yeah, it's like money flying out of the door. I can't even stop this, so I'm just gonna go with it.
It does, and you know what? You also learn that you have to be honest with your thoughts and what you want, and you can't just say what's right, and you can't just oh well, this is what you should do in this role, because you're vulnerable, and if you don't say what you really want, you're never going to get it, because you don't have this excess of to fall back on, and it's somebody else's responsibility, and I can let them worry about it. I'll just take on my one role within this puzzle.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice for entrepreneurs, and I'll ask you what yours is to wrap the interview up once I'm done. But I really take a lot of comfort in reading other entrepreneurs' journeys and learning their stories. I love the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, and that book, I always revisit those stories in my mind whenever I feel down about business or my personal, growth journey. I just think about Phil Knight ordering Nike's first shoes from Japan and waiting years for them to show up, and how crazy it was.
I love
and how
that. No, that book is so awesome. But it is true. Yeah. It's those testimonies and those journeys that you reflect on, and you're like, oh, it's okay, because you know what happened to him, and you know what happened to them, and they powered through it, and it all fell into place. You just got to do the steps, and I couldn't agree more that you can't be fearful about it. You just got to. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? And I think that's pretty awesome.
And it's going to feel ridiculous. Like, most of Nike's history until the 80s, he was selling the shoes out of his car trunk, which is so ridiculous. So
I love
it's
that.
just yeah.
No, I do. I think that's the part you're saying is that, just be ridiculous. Just do it. It's just like, haha, please, I guess on Nike, just do it. But no, I mean, it is so true. You just need to, you should just experience it. You should just put yourself out there and most of all, don't be fearful about it, because you have nothing to lose. And there's millions and millions of people, and a small network of people that may know of your last failure. There's 1,000 times those people that don't know about any failure. Failure is very powerful if you let it.
Yep.
It's
totally
very powerful
agreed.
On every level.
Well, I think that was a great way to wrap up the conversation. Just some fundamental truths, I think, about life, but especially about business and entrepreneurship. And I hope that's inspiring to anyone who's at any point of the business growth stage, but especially, at the start and at the middle, before you get to be the Nike of the world. Remembering that the process is the fun part, and all of that has to happen to achieve the best end result. So I'm excited to see Mod continue growing, and for it to really impact the way our market is turning into a more gig-based. I sort of hate that term, but people say that all the time.
I know. Is it really? I know it's like you do, but it is. It'll be interesting to see if it manifests like they say it's going to be as large as we're predicting 50%. I honestly can see it by just the way business is playing out.
And it's exciting to be a part of that. So I encourage the listeners to go check out Mod on musesondemand.com from a phone or tablet or desktop. And in the iOS store, you can download Mod as well. And sign up for an account, even if you're not a creative and you just want to stay around for some inspiration. And if you are a creative, I'd love to, and I'm sure Victor would also love to see your work on there. So, yeah, I encourage everyone to get involved with this platform as it is starting to grow, because it's going to be exciting to see what happens over the next few years.
All right, you guys are awesome. We appreciate you. You're so talented, and it's nice to work with like-minded people, not only from a business and a creative sense, but just from your souls. And so thank you.
Thank you again, Victor, for being part of our podcast. For those of you who are listening, make sure you check out Muses On Demand on the App Store or at musesondemand.com as soon as you possibly can. You won't regret it, and I'm very excited to see how much this platform grows over the next few years.